over 100 years later, the mystery remains unsolved. There are cases that fade with time, details get lost, witnesses disappear, memory weakens. But this case, it refuses to be forgotten, because what happened that night should have been impossible. No explanation, no clear suspect, and no logical sequence of events. And despite decades of investigation, even the most experienced historians and investigators still can't agree on one simple question. What actually happened? The year was 1908. A small, isolated town sat quietly along the edge of a dense forest in northern England. The kind of place where nothing unusual ever happened. Narrow dirt roads, stone cottages, oil lamps glowing faintly in the fog. Everyone knew everyone. Life moved slowly, predictably, peacefully, until one night changed everything. It began like any other. No storms, no warnings, no signs that something was about to go terribly wrong. But by morning, one man would be gone. And the place he vanished from would leave behind a mystery so disturbing. People would talk about it for generations. His name was Thomas Elridge. He was 42 years old, a quiet, methodical man who worked as a bookkeeper for the town's trading post. Thomas lived alone in a modest stone house at the edge of town, not far from the forest line. He wasn't unusual. In fact, that was the strange part. He kept to himself, followed routines, spoke politely, never caused trouble. Every morning he woke at exactly 6 a.m., prepared tea, walked the same path to work. Every evening he returned home before sunset. Always. Neighbors described him as predictable, almost to a fault. But in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, something shifted. Subtle at first. He began locking his doors earlier, closing his curtains before dusk, avoiding conversation. One neighbor later recalled something unsettling. She said Thomas had asked her quietly, "If you heard something outside your window, but saw nothing, what would you do?" At the time, she laughed it off. Now, it didn't feel like a joke. Thomas Elridge was last seen on the evening of October 14th, 1908. A shopkeeper confirmed he had purchased candles and bread shortly before closing. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, just another routine evening. But the next morning, everything changed. When Thomas failed to arrive at work, concern quickly spread. This wasn't like him. By midday, 2 men from the town went to check on him. What they found made no sense. The front door was locked from the inside, windows secured, curtains drawn. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no disturbance outside. But inside, something was wrong. The house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. A candle had burned down completely on the table. Beside it, an untouched plate of food. And Thomas? He was gone. No coat, no shoes missing. No indication he had left. It was as if he had simply vanished from a locked house. Local authorities were called immediately. At first, they suspected something simple. Perhaps he had left during the night. Maybe he wandered into the forest. But that theory collapsed quickly. There were no footprints outside, no disturbances in the dirt. Search parties combed the surrounding woods for days. Nothing. Not a trace. Inside the house, investigators began noticing strange details. The chair near the table had been slightly pulled back, as if someone had stood up suddenly. But there were no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken items, just silence. Then came the testimonies. A nearby resident claimed they heard faint knocking sounds sometime after midnight. Another said they heard footsteps outside, pacing. But when they looked, No one was there. As more statements came in, the case became even more confusing because none of the timelines matched and none of the details aligned. The deeper investigators looked, the stranger it became. Inside Thomas's house, they discovered something unsettling. Scratches, faint but visible, on the inside of the front door. Not deep enough to be immediately obvious, but deliberate, repeated, almost frantic. Then there was the clock, stopped at exactly 1:17 a.m. No mechanical issue, it had simply stopped. One witness later claimed they saw a dim light moving through the trees behind Thomas's house that night. Not a lantern, not a torch. Something different. Another insisted they heard a voice calling Thomas's name. But it didn't sound human, and perhaps the most disturbing detail of all, Thomas's bed had not been slept in, which meant whatever happened didn't happen in his sleep. Over the years, several theories emerged. None of them fully explained what happened. Some believed Thomas simply left. Perhaps he planned it. Perhaps he wanted to disappear. But this theory quickly fell apart. He left behind money, personal belongings, even his coat. And the locked door? There was no way to secure it from the inside after leaving. Others believed someone took him. A quiet, calculated intrusion. But again, no forced entry, no signs of struggle, no witnesses seeing anyone enter or leave. And the scratches on the door suggested something else entirely. The final theory was the one no one wanted to accept, that something happened that couldn't be explained, something that didn't follow logic, didn't follow rules, something that entered the heap without being seen and left, without leaving a trace. Years later, a new detail emerged, hidden in archived records. One of the original witnesses had changed their statement. Before their death, they confessed something they had never told investigators. That night, they didn't just hear footsteps. They saw something, standing near Thomas's window, tall, unmoving, watching. But when they described it, the details didn't make sense because they couldn't clearly describe its shape or its face, only that it didn't look right. And then it was gone. But instead of solving the mystery, this revelation made it worse. Because now the question wasn't just what happened to Thomas, it became what was outside his house that night. The case eventually went cold, with no evidence and no answers. Thomas Elridge was declared missing, then presumed dead. But no body was ever found. The house remained empty for years. Locals avoided it. Some claimed they heard sounds inside, late at night. Others said the forest behind it felt different, heavier, as if something lingered, waiting. Even today, historians and investigators continue to study the case. Records have been re-examined, theories debated, documentaries produced. And yet, nothing, no explanation holds up. No evidence points clearly in any direction, even with modern technology. We are no closer to the truth than they were in 1908. Because here's the part that unsettles people the most. Thomas didn't just disappear. He vanished from a locked room, without a trace, without a sound, without an explanation. And if something could do that, then maybe it wasn't a one-time event. Till today, no one has solved this case, no suspects, no answers, just a mystery that refuses to die. And what makes it even more terrifying? Someone knows exactly what happened.